Hello and welcome to the Recreation to Recreation podcast, the show where we explore the stories of people who have turned the activity that they love into positive change for our world. My name is Jen, and I'll be your sidekick on this adventure as we treasure hunt for gems of insight and wisdom while exploring the planet with our inspiring guests. For today's adventure, we're heading to Zambia and beyond with Amanda to explore her world of honesty, risk, and wildlife rescue. Hi, Amanda.
Hey, how are you?
Good, thanks. How are you doing today?
Very good.
So before we get into it, I would love if you could just tell us where you are, what it's like there, just get us situated in your world.
Sure. I am in Zambia right now. I'm living in Lusaka, but I do a decent amount of work in Kafue National Park. It's the rainy season, so everything is wet, green, lush, gorgeous, muddy, full of bugs, and slightly complicated. And I'm working for Game Rangers International at the Elephant Orphanage Project. And so I'm overseeing the facilities in Lusaka National Park and in Kafue National Park.
So before we get into the proper conversation, I always start these interviews with my weird and wonderful questions. They don't really have anything to do with anything, but they bring me a lot of joy. So I hope you're okay with that, and we'll just roll in.
Yes.
Awesome. If you could have a lifetime supply of anything, what would it be?
Whoa. I'm not prepared for that. Do you know what? I'm gonna tell you the first thing that came to my head, even though it's the most ridiculous answer, is cherries
Mm.
because they're one of my favorite fruits ever. And when I lived in Canada, when you have the Bing cherries and the like red ones that are dark and sweet, and then the Rainier cherries, and I was just like, this is heaven. I loved it. And I don't know why that was the first thing I thought about.
I love that, and I also really get it. Especially we're in the middle of the winter right now, and I dream of fresh
Oh,
fruit.
yes. Mhm.
And I'm like, "Oh, peaches, cherries,
Oh,
strawberries," you
yep.
know? I do get it. Yeah, great answer. So, did you ever get into trouble at school, and if so, why?
Not really. Okay, I'll tell you, when I was in kindergarten, I, of course, don't remember much about kindergarten, but I had read a report card from my kindergarten teacher. It was like when I first started school. And they said that I was like a delightful child, but I was super disruptive because I was always getting up and walking around to people's desks and talking to the kids and like disrupting them from doing their schoolwork. And I was actually just talking with a colleague of mine because I have continued to be kind of a disruptive office mate as well. Like, I literally have to, if I'm working with people in the office, I have to put headphones in. Otherwise, I talk way too much sometimes. It was just very funny to me that, some things never change. And even I'm better at not doing that, but I still do it.
She's just a social gal.
Sometimes, yes. Yes.
What's the biggest risk you've ever taken?
Oh, do you know what is that quote from The Mummy? That guy goes, "I only gamble with my life, never my money."
Mhm.
And I feel like that was somebody had else had asked me for a quote at one point, and I just felt like that some of the goofy stuff that I've done in work and doing in the field and stuff like that has been that. But I think, so you're always thinking that is a typical risk, right? But then, like, I can't remember the last time I looked at a house before I moved into it, right? I recently moved into this place where I got to see it ahead of time. Usually I'm just like, oh, sure, here's an apartment, it sits in the right place and it'll be fine. Or, moving into a house and I have almost nothing. And I'm like, oh, I'm sure it'll be fine. Or going to a different country for a job and being like, "Yeah, I'm sure it'll work out." And so I would say that, like, in general, I generally have a pretty, I guess, decent tolerance for risk and change and stuff.
Yeah, I really resonate with that for sure. Yeah, and I love the quote, and I also love that movie, so
So great.
what's the strangest rumor you've ever heard about yourself?
I have heard some pretty strange ones. The thing is that the one that I had heard and that actually was in there was, like, something I don't actually wanna talk about it,
Uh-huh.
but I don't know, I'm just not that kind of person that there's rumors about, I don't think. That's okay, so that's not very exciting, but, yeah.
No, but it's honest, and I love that.
It's honest.
If a TV show or movie was made about your life, who would you want to play you?
You know what? We talk about that every once in a while, and I'm like, "I don't know, man," because yeah, I just it's hard to think of somebody who would be goofy enough, basically. I don't know.
Same.
Everybody's too good looking. They're too pretty. And I'm like, "This is not authentic. That would not be real."
Okay, so we need to
Anyway,
find some unknowns to play us in a movie.
right.
Maybe we just play
Yeah.
ourselves, I don't know.
Right. That'd be so terrible.
Okay,
Ugh.
this one I'm pretty excited for, and we'll see if you're willing. How many animal sounds can you make, and are you willing to provide a demonstration of the most unique one?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Those are the sorts of things you do after 4 beers minimum, and you're around a campfire, and there's 0 recording devices.
Okay, fair enough.
I'm not that skilled at that kinda stuff, hey? I would love to be able to do accents or something like that, but I can't mimic people, I can't mimic do and the animal yeah, no.
What if I did it first?
Nope. There's 0% chance I'm gonna do that.
Well, alright. You know what? I appreciate a good boundary.
I'm
Not
sorry.
at all.
I'm no fun.
No apologies needed. Everybody listening, I want you to know it's okay to say no. Oh my gosh, I thoroughly enjoyed that. Okay. Well, let's roll into it. Let's start by just going all the way back. Can you take me back to your childhood, where you were born, and were you interested in animals, wildlife, vet potentially as a profession when you were a kid, or is this something that came later?
Alright, rolling it back to the beginning. I was born in Arkansas, and that's where I grew up, and we had a farm out there and lived on a dirt road, and, we were always running around in the fields and in the ponds and creeks and stuff like that, and that was I think that was pretty formative for all of me and my sibs. It's one of those things that, like, being out in the bush is always very comfortable. That's where I started out, and I guess I didn't think about being a vet actually, until my senior year of college, and it was really funny because my university friends and I would sit around and we had what we called the plan of the week, which was, "What do you think you want to do when you grow up?" And it was a very senior year sort of thing to do, and I'd already worked in a lab because I like science. I'd already worked in a lab, and I was like, "Well, this is not for me." And I hadn't really thought about vet school, and then I was sitting in a scanning electron microscopy class, and it just, like, came to me, it's like, "Apply to vet school, you should be a vet." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, that makes all the sense in the world." I was interested in medicine, but did not wanna work on people.
Mhm.
I like science, like animals. Yeah, seemed to be a good fit, so I just kinda went for it. I guess it never occurred to me that I wouldn't do it, like, once I made that decision, that was it was like, be a vet or bust.
And would you say that that's common across your decision-making process in life, that once you've decided something, you just stick with it?
This was something I'd had a conversation with a friend of mine very recently because we were talking about ebbing and flowing
Mm.
and changing as you grow and who you are as a person and what you enjoy doing and what you don't enjoy doing and what you really used to enjoy doing but don't enjoy doing anymore. I feel like that's one of the things that as a person I've kind of listened to my how about this? I've been privileged enough
Mhm.
to be able to listen to my interests and needs and being able to follow those sorts of things, and that has been able to do me well because then I've gotten to experience a lot of different stuff and find out what I like and don't like. So for me, I think that when I start doing something, I would like to say that I will finish it, but That hasn't always been the case. I've quit things when it became obvious that it wasn't a good path for me to continue. And I guess I'm not afraid to do the hard things to finish, and I'm not afraid to quit when it's not working.
I absolutely love that. I think that we have a really interesting relationship societally with quote unquote failure and quitting. You mentioned,
Mhm.
I think you made a really important point about the privilege of being able to choose and be able to
Yeah.
explore your passions and your interests. And, that is something that we should definitely be aware of. And it's good to make note of here. When you think
Yep.
about quitting something, just in case there's somebody listening who most people have been on the receiving end of someone saying, "Oh, well, you started it, so you should finish it."
Mhm.
What does that look like and feel like for you, or has in the past, when you really realized something wasn't for you?
That's a it's so interesting because different situations have been it's been different. Wow.
Mm.
It's really hard because, like, sometimes I like the job, but the environment isn't working for me, and I have to leave this environment. And then sometimes you're like, "You know what? The environment's okay, but the job is just I need to move on and do something else." Okay, so I'm gonna switch this just a little bit, if you
Of
don't
course.
mind, because it kind of my brain is, like, making a little jump to putting it into a bit of a context. It's different. When you're in an environment it's not working for you, then that's a totally different thing than being in an environment that is actually
Mm.
toxic. However, you don't need to have something be toxic in order for you to be like, this isn't working for me. Oh, this is what I was wanting to say. Yes. I wish that society would give people the grace to explore a career path in the same way that you get a bit more grace with dating,
Mm.
right? So if you're going out with somebody and it's not working, you don't necessarily even have to have reasons why you're like, this is not working, or we shouldn't date anymore. We shouldn't go forward with this. But with jobs, it's so weird how you're in a very complex relationship with your workplace, with your coworkers, with the actual job. And yet you're expected to come in and do that. And if it's the wrong thing, you're expected to keep going until the end of your contract. You're expected to, fulfill it's like you're trapped there until you do what you're supposed to be doing or they've gotten out of it, what they need, but where it's not necessarily always helpful for you or them. And I wish people had the freedom to have the same ability to walk in and out of jobs like you can explore relationships. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a really interesting comparison to pull because I just wanna bring something up here about relationships too, is that I think depending on how you've been raised and the society that you're in and the conditioning that you are, affected by, a similar vibe
Mhm.
exists in that, "Oh, well, you guys were
Yep.
only together for 3 months," or, "Oh, you couldn't make it last past 6 months." I think that there's
Right.
just,
Right.
all in all, too much judgment, too much expectation in general, regardless of what aspect of your
Mhm.
life it's part of. But yes, I really understand what you're saying, and I always joke I'm on my, like, 16th career here, so it's been
Yes.
once again, I've been very privileged to be able to explore all the different things that have called to me over the years. I've had to make hard decisions and heartbreaking decisions within my professional life because of other dynamics or circumstances. But for the most part, I've really been able to go after the things that I'm passionate about. Hence why this podcast even exists,
Mm.
because
Mhm.
for me, I
Mhm.
have made a career. If I was going to choose like one career trajectory to explain
Mhm.
my professional life, it's always turned recreational activities into something that is either a job, a business, a not for profit, a charity. Not that it doesn't
Mhm.
still obviously bring me joy and do what recreational activities should do, which is make us present and aware and loving being alive.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
I think it's a really interesting point that you made about the expectations, not only of the employer to
Yeah.
get out of you what you promised, but also expectations we place on ourselves, that our colleagues, our
Mhm.
parents, our friends. Yes, I too wish that. What do you think it would take in order for us to make that shift?
Do you know what? It would take for a lot of people more financial
Mhm.
freedom. It would also take a bit of a shift. I think it'd take a bit of a shift in the workplace, but also in society as a whole, because it really is getting into things that I'm also not very well versed enough to speak on. But I think if you have the possibility to explore things, that you should give yourself the freedom and do that. It's interesting because sometimes you see, and I'll use my career as an example. Sometimes you see young vets come out of school, they go and they get a job, they like it, and they go and buy a house in that area because that is what they have always been told to
Mm.
do. So then they have this house, and then maybe something changes at their workplace, and then suddenly it's not a great safe place for them to work anymore. But then they've got this house, and their ability to move is compromised, and then you're like, "Oh, why'd I buy this house?" And it's just like, these are the sorts of, like, societal expectations that you get a job, you buy a house, you do this, you do that, you buy a new car, you get, and then suddenly you've lost a little bit of flexibility to be able to figure out exactly what you need out of life and things like that.
This is really touching on something that I'm quite passionate about, which is having our own personal definition of what it means to live fully and live successfully, and how
Mhm,
important it is to have diverse examples of what life can look like. And that's,
mhm,
again, another reason why I
mhm,
love these conversations and why I always aim to find very different people doing different things because, yes, there are a lot of expectations of this normal pathway of what it means to be a quote unquote successful human. And so,
mhm.
what does living fully look like for you?
Man, I don't know if I've thought about it in that way, to be
Mm.
honest. Yeah. There was a point I remember being in vet school. I was dating this guy, super cool guy. I was 26, and somebody had asked me something, and I was thinking, yeah, by the time I'm 30, be married, have some kids, have be in a job, because that is the example. We ended up breaking up. It was kind of like, okay, I was pursuing career stuff. And then suddenly at one point, I was dating somebody else, and they were like, oh, we should get married and have kids. And I was like, that what? Uh, now that it's become, like, really real and a possibility, this guy was great where I was in my career, everything, and I was just like, "Is that really what I want?" Right? Is that but it's not just necessarily about what I want, but is that gonna be what's good for me, and am I gonna be good for
Mhm.
kids, right? And at the end of the day, it came down to actually no, but it was one of those things that I had to actually sit with for a while, and it was really, really hard. Oh, chatting with my mom. Yeah, she's like, "Kids aren't for everyone," and never really pictured you as a mom, and I was like, "Cool, thank you," and I remember some people saying, "That was horrible for your mother to say that," and I was like, "Do you know how wonderful that was for her to be honest with me, and for her to say something that I felt, and as somebody who knew me?" And so when I think about living life fully, I've never actually thought about it like that. It was kind of like from there, what does your life look like? I just didn't necessarily think about it. I knew that I didn't wanna buy a house and have that whole thing where it's like you're supposed to get a good job and buy a house and have the kids and get married, and I just was like, "Okay, that's not for me, so what is for me?" And so then it's just kind of been a long journey finding out what I like to do, and that's just what I've been kinda doing is following things that I've liked to do. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that, and I love the honesty from your mom, like, how liberating to be able to have her
Yeah.
say that to you and mirror back how you were
Yeah.
feeling.
Yes.
Yeah. And also to hear that, we don't have to have this grand plan, and we don't have to have it all figured out. In fact, it's really liberating when we don't, because then new opportunities can find us that otherwise we would have been closed to if we had this 5-year, 10-year, 15-year plan.
That is 100% what I tell people, and this is where you have what is it? The know thyself? You need to understand yourself because some people are super, super averse to change or a loss of control, or they find a lot of comfort in having a plan, being able to be like, I can do this and get these things out of it, and I'm expecting this and all of that. And that is very cool when people can find that, but that's not a universal thing. And I think that that's what is sometimes forgotten, that there are other possibilities that if you have the ability to tolerate uncertainty and you have some flexibility, there are some times that you can jump onto certain opportunities as they present themselves, and that's okay. But again, you have to kind of plan for that
Mhm.
as well, because if you've got obligations, like if you have a family, you can't really jump at a lot of the same kinds of opportunities. What it becomes is if you know thyself, but also figuring out what is the things that to you that are fulfilling, because the folks that I know who used to be big travelers and they've worked internationally a while and then they come back and they're like, you know what, I missed that, but now that I have a family, this is the thing that is fulfilling to me. That was fulfilling to me before, this is fulfilling to me now. Am I somewhat jealous of your thing? I mean, a little bit, in the same way that the stability of a house and a family and all that is very attractive sometimes, but at the end of the day, you know what is serving you and what is good for you and what you ultimately want. You can't have everything. No one can have everything. No one can have it all. You're always giving those compromises, but it's being able to know what you're compromising on and to be happy with that if you can. And again, this all comes from a place of being able to being privileged enough to be able to make those decisions or to be able to explore those things.
Yeah, and I really appreciate the point you made. You're absolutely right. There are some people that thrive with a plan, and we're coming from the perspective of not being a part of that group. It's
Mhm.
really important to nod to the fact that we need all of these different types of people in order for the world to function.
Yes.
And I really love the point you made about the fact that what was once for you isn't necessarily gonna be what's for you forever, and to know yourself
Mm.
as an evolving human being so that you can feel it out as and when things start to change. If being out there in the world, having grand adventures, all of a sudden doesn't feel like living fully to you. And in fact, yes, I've changed and I think I want this and I'm going to go down that route. To be able to, I think, walk the line and the spectrum of, I call it grieving and gratitude. You can feel both at the same time. So like your friends
Mhm.
feeling quote unquote jealous of you still living what was maybe an example of their previous chapter of their life
Mhm.
is more so just maybe
Mhm.
grieving the things around it, like the freedom, the independence, the ability to just go do what you want, when you want, wherever you want. Not that that's necessarily
Yep.
always the case either in the way that you're living your life too, because you do have obligations and
Yep.
responsibilities. But then there's also this gratitude I'm sure they're feeling about, "Oh, the stability that I do feel, and this totally different life experience that I'm having now that I am married with kids or dogs or in a house." And so I think that there's
Mhm.
certain times in life where we go through transitions, whether they're by choice or by change, which could be our bodies are getting older and I'm not able to do the things I was able to do anymore, or I can no longer live the way
Yep.
that I was living and I need to make some changes or whatever is going on. The superpower of being human is we can feel multiple things at the same time. I can be both excited and happy with my life the way that it is, but also still want something different in certain aspects.
Mhm.
And so something that I always like to highlight when we're talking about being human is, yeah, we're actually really complex. And we can let ourselves be
Yeah,
that way.
1000%.
I'm wondering, one of my weird and wonderful questions, which actually kinda came up here, is this relationship to risk, to uncertainty and the
Mhm.
unknown and resilience. And I'm just wondering, for you, and we can talk about this over the course of your life, but maybe when you've faced different opportunities and chances, what are maybe some of your approaches when you're facing the unknown or uncertainty that make you go after things, even like you said, well, it's just going to work out. What does that actually look like and feel like and sound like in your brain and your body?
I can tell you exactly. Contingency
Mm.
planning. It is having an alternative plan. And for some stuff, you really do need a good set of contingency plans. For other things, like, for example, if I was traveling and show up in a place, okay, well, I haven't booked a hotel room yet. I'm going to go and find, I still have like some plan in my head to where it's like, okay, well, I know that even if I can't get something here, this will work out. Right. So I think that my tolerance for risk and all of that comes from me having actually thought through a lot of different scenarios and feeling comfortable that I can figure it
Mhm.
out, basically.
Yeah, and do you think that that has increased over time just as you've proven to yourself time and time again that you can figure it out?
I think it's like more experience gives you more things. I'm always talking about like, in like a professional toolbox for problem solving, right?
Mm.
As you learn more things, you put it in your toolbox and you can access it later for, even not even necessarily the exact same thing. So the more times you figure things out, yes, it gives you more confidence, but that confidence comes from having added information to your decision making toolbox.
Yeah, and maybe sometimes a lot of these tools and transferable things aren't necessarily something we can put a name to or put our finger on. They're almost
Yeah.
like lived experiences and just we know how to do it without being able to explain it.
Listen, I'm going to tell you one thing. There is a lot of intuition that I go with, and it's not necessarily intuition based on feelings. So there's different, this is a topic that I sometimes will get on a little bit of a rant about. There's a difference between doing something because you feel you should and just be like, oh, I feel I should do this and whatever. And you have nothing behind it. I feel like when I have an intuitive feeling about something, my brain has been working in the background doing some processing of information that's come in, and then it is giving me a solution here because of the fact that I've been observant or that I've been reading about something or that I've been talking to people, and all that information's going in and it's giving me this like, okay, this is what we should do based on basically subconscious computing, resulting in some sort of intuition that I feel like I can go with. More like an output of what my brain's been doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean that's the amazing part about our brains is that they're constantly working.
Yes. Thank goodness.
Yeah. We should probably be a little kinder to them.
Probably.
Mm. Yeah, I find these kind of conversations so important and exciting because, once again, they give people insight into the fact that we don't all function the same. I've heard a lot of people talk about intuition and relating it to this feeling or a pull. And so it's great to hear your own interpretation of what intuition is to you.
Mhm,
And I think once
mhm,
again returns back to what we were talking about earlier, which is we get to decide all of it. What our beliefs are, what words,
mm,
phrases, experiences mean to us. And there are a lot of reasons why being an adult human being can be really annoying and
mhm.
challenging. All of the things that we have to do, but that to me is one of the coolest parts is even if we don't necessarily have the privilege of choice to leave a job and find another one because of whatever restrictions we're facing, we
Mhm.
still retain the ability to choose what to believe and what we place meaning on. And so I'm curious, when you've been in situations where whether it's a job or it's personal, and I'm not asking for detail, I'm just asking more so for your internal experience of it,
Mm.
where you knew you weren't meant to be there or it was no longer right for you, and whether that was dramatic or subtle. And maybe the escape hatch wasn't so available at that moment, and you needed to remain for longer than perhaps you would have preferred. What were some of the things that you relied on within yourself that helped you navigate those times?
Ugh, some of the worst times have been when I have been in some places that have been particularly bad for me. They're not necessarily bad for everyone. And so, like, when I say a toxic workplace or a toxic environment, I use that very, very sparingly, I think, because those sorts of things are different for different people,
Mm,
right? And but if you say that something is not working for you, then I feel like that's a bit safer and less blamey too. Some of the times in workplaces were particularly not good for me is that I had a lot of trouble navigating some of the things that were coming up that I found particularly problematic in relating to people, things that I was expected to do. It felt like a big whirlwind of a mess. I will tell you, I did not navigate all of those places very well. I can think of two in particular where I didn't navigate that well at all. And I then ended up going out with a little bit more of a bang than I had anticipated. It was all okay, but it was like it wasn't in the same way that I've exited other places where it was less fraught, right? I had a better understanding of the impacts of certain things on me so that I could be like, "Oh, this is happening to me now. This
mm.
is not good. I need to figure out how to deal with this better." I would say that I have not been very good at navigating those sorts of things in the past, and it took quite a lot of work to figure out how to do it.
I think that we're not necessarily taught how to do endings very well. So a lot of it does tend to come down to just trial and error. And to be able to hear you sort of say, I didn't navigate that well at all. I also have situations where I reflect back and I go, wow, yeah, I really could could have done that a lot better. And
Yep.
I wonder, it's been a pathway for me to be able to look back on those times and search for the ways that I could have done it better and learned more about
Mhm.
myself.
Yep.
How did that version of Jen show up? What was actually happening internally at the time when I was trying to navigate those circumstances? And what has that taught me about myself and how A,
Yep.
I can maybe recognize the warning signs a little bit earlier so I don't get so deep into it before I recognize it's not for me. You know, red flags are not bunting and celebration. They're there for a
Yes.
reason. We just sometimes ignore them. You know, whether it goes from the feather to the brick to the truck to the steamroller. I'm curious, as you look back on those times, what do you think it has taught you, and what have you brought forward from it in terms of how you now maybe navigate more challenging situations?
It's all super hard, hey, because it also depends on where you are in your personal growth, what kind of issues you bring, what kind of issues all of the people you're working with are bringing, what kind of issues work culture is bringing. And this is where we go into these are such complex relationships. And I think that even though this is like an old trope, understanding that the only person I have any control over is myself,
Mhm.
and that everything that I'm feeling is valid, but I don't have to react to every single feeling, and every single feeling doesn't always have to lead to anything. That's really helped quite a lot as well. When you're talking about wildlife rehabilitation, conservation, all of the things that I have worked in my entire career, this is stuff that's like brings out passions and brings out emotions. And you're in it because it's not a paycheck, because that's not impressive in any way, but you're in it because you believe deeply in, for example, what the organization is doing and what the mission is. And to be able to give that importance and to be able to give all of the attention that a job needs and that an issue needs and all of that, but keeping a little bit of yourself for yourself too, right? Not putting it
Mhm.
all out there on the line. That was something that I did learn. And it's not like I'm holding back necessarily. It's more that I am metering things and doing this in a very mindful way instead of getting sucked into a situation or into an operation or something like that, being able to engage in a more present, full, aware way. And that has helped me tremendously, but it took some time.
Mm. Wow, I love that. I think you just really clearly encapsulated what it is to live mindfully. And, not even just professionally, but, we can apply that personally too, right? And I think that this is something that happens quite often when people do pursue a profession that is based on their passions, is that it becomes everything and they
Yeah.
live it, breathe it 24/7. And as I mentioned earlier, I've made a career off of recreational activities into some kind of purpose. And
Mhm.
there have been times where I actually fell out of love with that passion because
Mm.
I made it my bread and butter and maybe it wasn't thriving or going as well as I had hoped. So I'm curious, I'd love to delve into this a little bit more about how that has been for you as you've been more discerning and mindful about the amount of yourself that you invest into your work.
Well, I'm still working on it. I
Yeah.
am still working on defining what that looks like, and it's one of those things that it's an everyday sort of thing. You run into some things, and you're like, you do your best, and then you're like, "This is all I can do. This is it." And also being able to convey that as well, right? And not be upset about it. Being able to be, I don't wanna say, like, overly logical or rational about those things because you have to acknowledge the challenges that are going in and the feelings that are going in and stuff like that, but I'm just thinking about a particular item that has come up recently that is very emotionally charged, and I'm navigating that, and I'm being very conscious how I am because we have multiple players involved,
Mm,
and I'm just needing to say, "All right, this is what we do. This is the only thing we can do, and so let's go for it." But because then it also becomes managing other people's expectations, emotions, and things like that, because it's not just you. It's all a work in progress, and I feel like also these are the sorts of things that you do, and you're gonna do some of them right and some of them wrong, and to figure it out when you're doing it wrong and being like, "Oh, this is not working," and then to be able to readjust, but also giving yourself a little bit of grace and saying, "Okay, that did not work, and it doesn't mean that I failed in that particular thing, it means that I
mm,
just need to readjust and reset and mitigate and let's try again." And I think that also is something that's tough to, like, just to be super gentle with myself because otherwise I am not easy on myself. Like, "You should have done this, and you should have done this, you should have done this," and you're like, "How could I have done that? I didn't have the right information," or whatever, and they're like, "Okay, actually, I did what I could at that time, but going forward, I will do this." And yeah, it's definitely rough.
mhm, and I think what you touched on there about expectation management is something that we And I mean that with ourselves as well as others, but
Mhm.
I wonder if as we mature and we get a little bit braver to have boundaries, like saying no as a full sentence and being more aware of our capacity and capability in any circumstance, what information we have available, as well as, even just the simple
Mhm.
things like how rested am I?
Yeah.
Have I fed myself? Am I watered? The
Yep.
things that we
Yep.
think about for animals, we are the same. We need to think of them for ourselves too. That all
Yep.
fits in and interweaves into how we can meet any circumstance or situation. But I think the other piece that you talked about there is being gentle enough with ourselves and giving ourselves the grace to say, I did my best. And maybe the best then doesn't look the same as the best would be now, but it
Mhm.
was in that circumstance. And I have this
Mhm.
phrase I've been saying to myself, do your best and fuck the rest. Honestly,
Yes.
and whether you're okay with swearing or not, but it
Yeah,
helps
absolutely.
me remember, Jen, sometimes you just that's all you can do. It really is,
Yeah.
actually, at the end of the day, like you were saying earlier, all we can really do is control how we show up, and even then, sometimes we can't. And it's really just about how long does it take us after the situation to look at it and really understand, okay, what was going on here? How can I do it better next time? And what might
Mhm.
that look like? So, yeah, I think you answered the question beautifully and brought up some really important points there. As we were just talking about our ability to be honest with ourselves and with others,
Mm. Mhm.
I'm also curious to invite you to be honest about your job. Amongst others, there's sort of a range of jobs I can think of where we might glamorize them a little bit, and
Yes.
I would love to just have you talk to us about all of it. Give us a real look into being a wildlife vet.
Okay. So I have to be honest in this. I was a wildlife vet, and I guess I would still say I am, but I am doing project management right now. And being a wildlife vet is super helpful because I am managing an elephant orphanage. So we get baby elephants that their parents have been or their mothers have been killed, or maybe they've been separated somehow. And then we basically take care of them and then get them back in the wild. And it takes years and years and years, which is very cool. I've been in this career for more than 20 years. And in this job, I have gotten to use almost every single piece of training and experience that I have collected over those 20 years. And it's been really interesting. There's elements of wildlife vet, but then there's also elements of people management, and there's elephants elements
Well, there are
of
elephants also.
yes, there's elements of research and field-based research, and it's fun to say that, like, this job has been,
Mhm.
like, super, super interesting for me because of that multifaceted nature, and it's almost like a casserole of different tasks and topics. Okay, so I wanna go back to wildlife vet too, though, specifically because it looks so different depending on what you're doing, right? So you have wildlife vet that is working for the government, which might be doing a lot of disease testing, moving animals around, things like that. You have wildlife vets that might be private practice. So they're doing some of that, but also they are treating animals in the field, doing rescues. Or it might be a wildlife vet in a rehabilitation setting, like in a hospital, where you've got babies that are coming in or animals, so mostly smaller animals that are victims of the illegal wildlife trade, and you need to get them back and healthy and into the wild. And there's so many different aspects of that, and I think sometimes we think of wildlife vet as being one or the other, but it can be actually pretty complex of a field. Like, it could be any one thing on a given day, right? Maybe you're putting a
Mhm.
collar on a lion, or maybe you're giving fluids to a dehydrated pangolin, or picking up a monkey that has been a pet and you need to take it to a rehabilitation facility. Anything could happen.
Mhm. And what would you say to somebody who's considering going down the pathway of being a wildlife vet, now that you've sort of painted the spectrum of what that could look like.
Well, I hope they don't wanna make any money, because you won't. I think, again, what you're talking about is the glamour of something and the appearance of something, and then what it is in reality, it's so different because you go out in the field and you might be at a place where you're camping. It might be raining, it might be freezing cold, it might be really, really hot. You might be cooking over a fire. You might not find the animals you're looking for. You might have to do with less resources than you really want. Maybe you're going out on foot when you really should be in a helicopter. There's all sorts of issues with partners aren't working together. Everything is super political. People are questioning you. It's like you could be on call 24/7, so you don't necessarily have as much of a life as you thought you might have. Yeah, maybe you're based in a national park that's a 3-hour logistics flight from the capital city, and you'll be trapped there in the rainy season in a 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer compound area in a fence, and you don't leave for 3 months at a time. And so, how glamorous is that? You're like, "Well," I think that certain things appeal to certain people, and again, know thyself. I found that being in the middle of a national park in a remote area was not my cup of tea, even though
Mm.
I really did like the work. The living arrangements were no, man. Uh-uh.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for that because, as I said, honesty is the best policy. I think it's good for
Mm,
us to know what it looks like because every job is a bit of a shit sandwich. There's always gonna be things that you like and things that you don't like.
right.
And
Yeah.
that's how we learn what we want to be doing or we don't want to be doing, and we further clarify and discern, and as we talked about, the glamorization of these kinds of roles are misleading, and mean that
Mhm.
sometimes people can go down a pathway that actually isn't necessarily for them. Not that they're not gonna learn that, and there is no better way of discerning what is or isn't for you than just through lived experience, and so I don't by any
Mhm.
means want to deter someone from following this pathway, but I just think that more
Mhm.
honest conversation about what it can look like to live your passions is important.
Mhm. Yeah. And also, when you're looking at, like, what a field looks like, because I'm obviously working internationally, and I've been working internationally for more than 10 years now, and it is something that is changing as well. When you look at wildlife veterinary medicine, in certain places, when I was in Malawi, there weren't any veterinarians doing wildlife that were in country, right, when I started, and so there was a big gap. But if you go to neighboring countries, there are, right? And so there's no need for anybody to come in to fill those roles. And I think that as time is passing, most places actually have wildlife vets. They have vet schools in country. They have people who know what to do in country. So you don't need to do that. And I think that that's something that has been a big shift over the last 20 years for sure is the need for any external professional support in that way. It's just not necessary. And I think that that's something that people need to know about as well because all these sorts of professions change and ebb and flow and things like that. And it's really great to have people from the area doing the work in their own in their own country that is sustainable. And that's what should be happening, right? So I think that, when I talk to veterinary students from the United States, from Canada, from Europe, this is something that you should not expect to be able to go internationally to practice veterinary medicine like they did 20, 30 years ago. That's not
Mhm.
happening. And so if that's still an idea in your head, then it's time to adjust that a bit.
Mhm. Yeah, and so important for people to know at that stage, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
When we look at opportunities that are available to people, because I remember when I was 18, which is a while ago, but I grew up in the UK, and so gap years were a really
Oh,
big
yeah.
thing.
Mhm.
And one of the things that people always aimed to do was go abroad and volunteer. And one of the more popular opportunities was always working with wildlife. What do you
Mhm.
want people, citizens of the world, to know about volunteering and how best they can support and contribute to projects like yours?
Gosh. There's so many levels of volunteering, hey? I think that when you look at volunteering, the big thing that I would say is a reputable organization that isn't just going in with a bunch of volunteers and doing stuff and coming out. It needs to be established in the country they're working in. I think that's the most important because there are a lot of volunteer programs where people take people's money, they go in for a job, they come out, the money is retained in the organization that doing basically like tourist safaris, stuff
Mhm.
like that. And, I would say avoid those. And if you're looking at volunteering, it's actually a great way to bring money into an organization, but I would say that is what you should look at it as, is a way of donating money to the organization because they always have volunteering fees and stuff like that. Even though it sounds a little bit weird with volunteering, there's not as much need for people to come and do things because there's a lot. Okay, so when you're talking about volunteering, I think I would be remiss if I didn't bring up the colonial and imperial nature of the whole idea of coming and volunteering because people need you and need your skills or something like that. There's bigger conversations that need to be had around that. I would say that people who are supporting these organizations with their money, with their time in like very, very reputable organizations, that is one thing that you can do that is a great source of unrestricted funding for these organizations. And I think coming over and why you want to come over, just making sure that you understand as best you can the history of the country and the relationships that it has to the rest of the world and understanding. Yeah, sorry. I'm not very eloquent on this, but I also think it's a really important topic. Does that make sense? Um,
Absolutely, and I was gonna bring it up if you didn't. So, I think that,
okay.
this is an integral part of not just in the topic of volunteering, but in travel in general, is being really cognizant of history and our role as individuals and world citizens as we travel around to have these experiences, especially when we think about, like, I always think about with donation as legacy, and I'm living that legacy now. Like, how do I want to be in the world? How do I want to
Mhm,
contribute my time, effort, money, my voice to the things
mhm,
that I'm passionate about? And that's why these conversations, once again, are so important because it's not just a case of Googling, volunteer in Africa and then
right,
finding the
yeah,
first thing there and going, oh, that looks good enough. Really
yep,
taking the time, like if you want to be ensuring that what you're investing your energy into is something that really is respectful of not just the present of what needs to be done, but the past that is the foundation for why it's happening the way that it's happening and the future that you
mhm.
wanna see for the world too. So, yeah, no, I think what you said was actually quite eloquent, so
It's something that's come up a couple of times recently that I feel like I do need to be able to talk about a little bit better. Saying and thank you actually for this because it's a good opportunity to be able to have these conversations with people.
Mhm.
And usually, honestly, I'll tell you, I have the conversations with people on a vet side. And here's what I say for vet students, which is a little bit different. The history of young veterinarians in United States, Europe, United Kingdom, Australia, those places, is that they might graduate and then they come over to other places to quote unquote learn. They do a bunch of spay neuter clinics and they learn how to spay neuter and they see a bunch of cases and things like that. And I'm like, absolutely not. That is not what you should be doing at this point, you learn where you are in your home country because what ends up happening is that then they're coming over and taking away opportunities from local students sometimes if the organization isn't well run to make sure they devalue local veterinarians by providing services for free when there are local veterinarians who are also trying to provide those services and they're in competition with them, right? They're trying to make a living. And then here's somebody else is like going and spaying dogs for free. And
Mhm.
that's always not sat right. And being understanding that what is always helpful is, for example, expertise and bringing over if you're a boarded surgeon or if you're an ophthalmologist or you have some sort of expertise that you're bringing over, that is something that is specialists all over the world. It's very useful, right? But we don't need people to come over and learn, right? That
Mhm.
is we're kind of past that, and we need to have a different philosophy on this.
Yeah, and this really, mirrors part of my own career trajectory that I think is relevant here, that I used to do a lot of work on plastic toxic pollution in the oceans,
Mm,
and,
mhm,
so much of the first part of that work and journey was international and ocean crossings and worked in the Caribbean, and then I came to realize, I was like, "Well, what right do I have to go to other countries and tell them this is better practice around plastics and toxics?" And not that, as you said, when there's expertise involved, it's a different story, but I wasn't doing anything back home yet. And so I actually stopped doing all of the international piece and really honed in on where I was living here in the Great Lakes. And since then,
mhm,
set up a not for profit and ran it here, basically
mhm,
to say, okay, I'm going to focus on where I live and making sure that I can help with best practice here by living it first and then letting people know, hey, these are different ways that you can have a ripple effect every day with the choices that you're making. That information can be available to anyone everywhere, but it doesn't need me to go and deliver it. And I think that
mm,
part of the podcast piece here, and when I started it, making sure that every guest that I had on chose a cause for me to donate to, is
mhm,
recognizing that we are investing time and energy where we are, and that your knowledge, where you're based, is going to put my money where it's best utilized. And I have
mm,
been exposed to so many amazing charities and projects and initiatives through this podcast that I, A, never would have heard of, probably, even if I'd Googled it, but B, from people who are actually involved and can guarantee that that money is being utilized for its best and highest possible service. And I
mhm,
think that that is part of what we're talking about here, recognizing that we don't necessarily need to be going all over the world and volunteering. Not that that's a bad thing, but
mhm,
there's so much that can also just be done here in your own backyard that
mhm.
then, as you said, doesn't take opportunities away from people who are in country that need them in order to not just thrive, but survive.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anything to just be like, "Okay, don't."
And so I'm curious, I wanna stay conscious of time too, and I'm
Mhm,
really enjoying this conversation, but one of the pieces that I just love to hear from you is having worked with animals for 20 years in all sorts of different environments and situations, and what do you wish people knew that maybe you've
You know
seen
what?
that we don't see?
What I would say is I wish people would stop being surprised by animals because it's like, "Oh, this animal's doing this. It's so smart." Yes, of course.
Mhm.
Or the fact that every animal has a distinct personality and people are surprised by this. Y'all. Yes, they all have different personalities, and I think you see that with your domestic animals, and you forget that that happens with wild animals too, and that sometimes their personalities shape their behavior and what they do and how they respond to things. And to me, that's fascinating, and I want people to appreciate that every single animal, just like every single person, is different and complex in, of course, within the species specifications. But yeah, it is so cool. And it's so cool to see the different personalities at play, especially with like monkey politics and how interesting troop dynamics are and all of this. And I would love for people to have that as a given, that of
Mm.
course they're going to be complex and of course they're going to have cool things. And when we're learning something from about them new, that yes, we are finally appreciating animals as they should be.
I love that answer. What do you think we could do better to help people understand that? I mean, first of all, where do you think the disconnect lies in terms of why we can see that and appreciate that in our domesticated animals, but we somehow forget that, of course, wildlife would be the same? And then what do you think we can do in order to help people get rid of that disconnect?
It's always funny. Okay. Okay. So this is a really interesting topic to me
Mhm.
because being in the field, a veterinarian, I am in wildlife conservation. And when you're in this field, it's something that's kind of all consuming. It's something that you look at, most of the people in this field have really, really, really put a lot of effort into getting where they are. They've donated time, they've donated money, they've donated blood, sweat, and tears to this. And then you can go and talk to classmates from university, and they never think about hippos. Like, when was the
Mm.
last time you thought about a hippo? And you're like, "What?" And they're asking me what the difference between a hippopotamus and a rhinoceros is. And I'm like, "What? How can you be alive and not know this?" And it's just because they work in a different field, and they don't think about it because it has nothing to do with them, and it's not their everyday life, and they might watch a show on TV about it, but it's not part of their existence on a daily basis, and sometimes it's not even a part of their general interest. And so I'm joking a bit about this, but it's like I feel like that the people who are interested in animals are super interested, and the people who aren't are very, very casual about what they know about animals. And so, but then when I think about, if somebody was to explain, like, what is a spark plug and what does it do, or anything about economics at all, or, or internet security or anything like that, forensic linguistics, any sort of topics that I really don't know anything about, then they might be like, "How can you not know this?" And so I feel a
Mm.
little bit like have this like righteous outrage that they don't know how smart millipedes are, and then other things that I am woefully ignorant of. So I'm mostly joking. Yeah, I don't know. I think that people will find it out.
Hmm. Yeah, they'll lean in if they're interested, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on our relationship with the natural world, because I have my own lived experience and understanding of it. But for you, having lent into a life that means that you're closer to the natural world than most, and really involved in parts of it that not necessarily most people are around the world. What's your own
Uh,
relationship with the natural world?
it was very interesting because I was walking down the street and I saw this tree had these like really, really pretty, soft, bright green leaves that were growing because it's a rainy season. So everything's lovely and lush. And it's just like being able to go and just gently touch them and feel like, "Oh, that is such a nice little, like 'cause it's such a light feeling, like, you can't even touch them between your fingers, you just have to touch them with your fingertips and appreciate that, or, like, the coolest bug I saw the other day, and it was a beetle, and it was spotted, and it was,
Right.
like, amazing, and I had to stop and look at it even though I was going somewhere with somebody else. I was just like, "Wait a minute, look at this bug."
God, I really understand this.
That's one of the reasons why I like here is because there's life and I like being a part of it on a daily basis, and I will say that the climate I love the climate, Zambia, Malawi, Southern Africa is such a nice climate because the outside is hospitable pretty much all year round. Like, it's hot as heck in October, November for sure, yes, but you have your windows open, you have your doors open, you're outside, it's like the cold is not going to kill you, and it's just so nice to live outside so much, to be able to have the windows open all the time. Sure, you fight the bugs, but yeah, and that's one of the things that, like, I appreciate here because it does allow me to be more in touch with what was going on. I remember my first year in practice, I was at a private practice in, Florida, and it was in an old bank, right? So it was super secure, there were hardly any windows, but it meant that, like, I had no idea what was going on outside. There could be,
Mm.
like, a huge storm, and because it was this concrete friggin' bunker, I had no idea. So the world could end, and we would have no idea till we stepped outside of that building. It's such a shame to be in such a nice a place with such nice weather and be stuck inside, and so I think that's really shaped how I've liked to live, basically. The opportunity to be outside and not be cold. No snow, no, no, no.
Okay, well, when you come to visit, make sure it's summertime.
Yes.
Yes, I remember one of my earlier jobs after university was in the Environmental Change Institute at Oxford, and I had a
Yeah.
basement office, and there was only the tiniest little window, and it was right at sidewalk level, so all I could see were people's feet
Oh, yeah.
as they walked past,
Excellent.
and that was my light bulb moment of like, "Nope."
Um,
I've gotta find some other ways of living this life because this just isn't gonna work for me, and fortunately, once again, with privilege, have been able to live the majority of my professional and personal life being part of nature, which is the truth of what we are,
yes.
really. We're just another animal.
I was thinking about when you were like, your light bulb moment. 'Cause I was living in Calgary, and Calgary is like, it was so much fun living there, and I loved all the people that I was friends with and all of that, but I remember it was February, and I was scraping ice off of my car. It was probably -15 or -20, something ridiculous, and I was so cold, and I was so sad, and I started crying, and then my eyelashes froze together, and I
Yep.
was like, "Absolutely not." I was like, "This is I'm not doing this anymore. I cannot handle cold." I've got to get out of here. Whew.
And I think this perfectly encapsulates what we were talking about earlier in terms of there's nothing like lived experience for discerning
Mm,
what you
mhm.
like, what you don't like, what you wanna do,
Yep,
what you don't wanna do. So,
yep.
everybody just go out and experience and you'll figure it out.
Whenever you can, absolutely.
Thank you so much for today. This has been such a great conversation.
It's been fun, hey?
Yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. Now, before we finish up, have you chosen a cause for the recreation donation?
So it is Wildlife Action Group, and they manage 2 forest reserves in Malawi. And the woman who is the manager in, like, in situ in Tuma Forest Reserve and Salem Forest Reserve, she is an amazing person, a great friend, but they just got, a little elephant calf, and that is the first one that they're trying to raise so that they can get it back to its herds because yeah, that's a great success story. That's a cool, cool, cool story there in Tuma Forest Reserve. That's the organization.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you. And I'm really excited to support it. Thank you for choosing it. I have one more question. before we wrap up here. It's the only question that I ask that's the same in every single interview. So I hope you're ready.
Oh, no. Okay.
What do you think is the meaning and purpose of life, the universe, and everything?
Oh my gosh. Oh gosh, if I was is it 42? Was that it?
You can you can say 42 or you
Oh,
can
yeah, no, it's do you know what? Friends, that's it. Like, being a good friend, because I feel like that no matter what you accomplish in life or don't accomplish, the people are gonna remember you, and if you're a good friend, if you're support like, family is friends the same way, but I say friends encompass everything. That's the whole meaning of life is friends. That's it.
What do you think it means to be a good friend?
Gosh. You know what? Okay, I don't know if I don't know if it's, like, a meaning to be a good friend, but, it's like when my friends like, are successful at stuff, like, a friend of mine actually, 2 friends of mine just got cool new jobs, and I'm so proud. I feel like I wanna burst. I'm so happy that
Mm.
people appreciate them the way that I do, or when a friend is getting married and you're like, "I'm so glad that there was somebody who appreciates them the way that I do." And when, friends call you for support or share exciting things and you send goofy memes on a group chat or something like that, and it's like, that's the whole thing, and it's like, yeah.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much.
Cool.
I so appreciate your time today.
No problem, this was fun.
This episode's recreation donation is in support of Wildlife Action Group. As you now know from exploring with Amanda and I in this episode, this is a nonprofit conservation NGO created in Malawi in response to illegal commercial deforestation and poaching of wildlife. In the past 30 years, they have remained dedicated to protecting, preserving, and restoring 2 forest reserves that are key water catchment areas. They do this with the support of government, local partners, and in cooperation with local communities. Whether you can volunteer your time, money, or your voice, we hope you'll head over to our website to find out the different ways you can support their unique version of recreation for the world. Please take the time to let us know what the stories we explored in this episode meant to you, and if you do take action to support this month's cause, thank you. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Recreation to Recreation. If you or someone you know has a unique and inspiring story to tell, make sure to reach out so we can share it with the world. Until next time, keep experiencing, keep expanding, and keep exploring.